Hey, what's up? This is Carlo at 4GQ TV. Today we have a very special guest with us, and I'll get to him in just a moment. Going to introduce real quick who's on the panel with us. We have Dion for 4GQ TV, and we have Paul for 4GQ TV as well. So, special guest today is Josh. Josh, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Josh Bramer. I'm a property master in the film industry. My home base is Hollywood, California, and I work on movies, TV shows, commercials, music videos.
Wow, that's actually a lot, and people don't realize that. There's a lot in there. Music videos, too?
Yep, I just did a music video for Bad Bunny. Came
Wow.
out like right around Halloween.
Oh wow! So
Wow.
it's got to be a fun job, stressful but fun job at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it since I started in the industry around 2000, like 11, 2010. And at first, it was just very scary. I had no idea what I was doing. And you kind of just start, it's almost like you're on an island alone and you got to figure out how to start fire. I mean, it's a lot of times it's hit or miss. Like there's no like rhyme or reason to do a prop. There's just so many different outlets that you can do. And just over the years, you kind of learn what works and what doesn't, and trial and error, and you learn from your mistakes. But yeah, it can be very stressful. There's a lot of stress involved, especially when it comes to, money management and having a big team, and making sure everybody's happy, and also making sure the props look good. And yeah.
So I'll start off with some of the questions before the other guys ask. But I wanted to ask you, so like when you got into the industry, what was your foot in the door? Was it like a friend that said, "Hey, I got this gig, check it out," or you were just like, "I'm just going right into this."
Well, I being from Michigan, I've always loved movies. I loved movies, and the thing that really got me was watching the behind the scenes, like how things were made, and like Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. Like I loved learning how they did that stuff. And it was almost like a new world, like opening up a closet door and going inside, and it was just expansive knowledge that I was able to learn. And I came out to California in like 2009 for a spring break with my brother, and I just I've always wanted to move to California. I always, loved everything about it, just the lifestyle and just like the warm weather. And I knew I had to move, and I ended up going into Hollywood, and I like loved everything about it. And then I went back home and I ended up applying to film schools, and I ended up getting into the Los Angeles Film School. And it was an experience. It was like a 13-month program. I really knew nothing about what filmmaking was, just watching the behind the scenes. So a school like that, it's like a 13-month program that I was in, and each month you learn something different. So like the first month it was like learning the basics, and then like our math classes were like budgeting for film. Our writing classes were about like script writing. So like they incorporated a bunch of things that you could use as tools in the real world, and it was great because I learn by my hands and being, making things and stuff like that. So getting to like learn tools from a film school. Like I'm not very good at learning it. Like even in high school, I wasn't like a top of the class, straight A kind of person. I was always having more fun with my friends than I was learning. So being in an environment where I could, learn a skill and then actually put it to use right then and there was just a lot of fun. But when I graduated, I actually graduated and wanted to be a sound mixer. I really enjoyed audio engineering and just like capturing a perfect audio and then going in and editing it. Like that was what I absolutely loved. And I ended up buying like my own sound equipment. And then like about 2 months after graduating, one of my friends that I went to film school with was working in an art department, and she was like, "Hey, the production needs a PA to help out with this thing." It was called Jamie Foxx's All Star Comedy Jam, and it was like Snoop Dogg, Jimmy Fox, like a bunch of huge like comedians and rappers. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I've never done this before in my entire life." And it was like the most excruciating like 14 hours. I was in charge of Snoop Dogg's green room, Jamie's green room, and then just randomly I was running back and forth from the bar grabbing drinks for people, and like they're like, "You can't take the back here." I'm like, "I have a VIP pass. I mean, it's not for me." So I learned very fast that it was going to be a lot of work. And I think like the next day we had Meta World Peace. I forget if you going by that still from the Lakers. Uh, uh, like a clothing line called Ballin, and it was like shorts and
Mm.
shoes, and they had like a Ballin release party, and I remember just like being so exhausted, like a 16-hour day just like knocked me out. And I just went there, helped set up a couple things with the art department, and I went into like this back room. There was like a table, and I'm just sitting on the couch. I didn't even realize he was sitting next to me, and then Madonna was like two seats over. I'm like, just out of it, so tired. And then he's like, "Hey man, you want some of my shoes and shorts?" I'm like, "Sure, these are pretty cool." I only wear like sandals, but sure. But it was kind of like that was like the project that kind of got me the ball rolling in the art department world because I with that production designer he needed help returning stuff and he's like, "Hey, can you drive a truck?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I can." And I ended up driving a truck to do stuff to returns to Jamie Foxx's office, and then just kind of snowballed from there. I started helping them on a lot of projects, and then um, eventually they needed the production designer needed a prop master to do a short for him, and I was like, "I'll do it." And he's like, "Well, if you do pretty good on the short, then I have a feature after that." And I was like, "Yeah, I would love to try and give throw my hat in the ring." And I absolutely knew nothing about what I was doing. So it was like reading a script and just writing down what props I think needed, and it was a learning experience. I wasn't getting paid very much, and it's not that money wasn't an issue. It was I needed to learn, so it was jumping right in there and starting to get my feet wet.
Oh man, that's a crazy ride that you just took us through right there.
That
And
was the first 2 months of my life too. Not even
oh,
the rest of it.
it's almost like your own TV show, right?
Yeah.
Hey, so far as the creative side though, I mean, all the stuff that you learned in school, um, how do you feel about flexing now after all this time? Do you feel like you have reached the pinnacle where you need, or you feel like there's a lot of room to grow? And what is your ideal uh is it TV or movies? What kind of medium do you enjoy? Uh,
Um, I mean, it's hard to say. Like looking back at film school, like me as a person, I had no idea like what any of the crew members did. Like I remember I was
Did we lose him?
think we did. He froze.
Yep.
Is Carlo there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it ain't him. Let's go blame him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And
we
then
we'll cut this part out, the freeze.
yeah.
he said that question was so
We'll
strong
see.
it sent him
Yeah.
flying.
We'll see how long. Oh, there he's gone, and he's back.
Welcome back.
I'm back.
All right,
Hi.
we'll cut that freeze out. Don't worry.
Okay.
It was a nice pose, though. You were like off in it. Yeah.
Uh, it's not frozen or having any
No, you're
No,
good
you're
now.
good.
interruptions
Yeah.
You're
right
good.
now, is it?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay, okay. And it's still recording. We were talking about film school and
Yeah,
the
your what is your preferred medium? Um,
um I mean, as the beginning of my career, the reason why I feel like it might have taken off a lot was because I really never said no to a lot of projects. I mean, there wasn't like hundreds a week that were coming in, but it was always something different. It was always something new. And even if I didn't know how to do it, I would put on the best smile and try my best. Like I don't know. I just remember like because I actually as a prop master, I didn't learn to be a prop master. I kind of just got hired to be a prop master. So every time a new project would come up, I would always get asked questions, and I would just be like, "Yeah, of course," And I just never was like, "No, that's not possible. We can't do that." I'd always say yes, and I'd always figure out how to make it, or make it myself, or have it made, or find an option that would fit into our budget, or get product placement for free, or something like that. But it was it was always like a learning. It was almost like every time I did something, I could, learn from that and then use it on my next project. Because with props, we're like one of the departments where everything is always there's always something different in the script. I mean, with our a costume designer, they're always finding the same clothes unless it's a period piece. But there's always an avenue to get something. And with props, it can be anything. Like it's literally just whatever the imagination wants to put in there, and it's always been almost like an adventure, like a scavenger hunt every time I start something new. So it's almost like I get to revisit some of the ideas or the things that I've done in the past and learn from them, make them better, and I absolutely love that. As far as
Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead. Didn't mean to cut you off.
oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess as far as like the medium that I like movies. I like I like how it's almost like the first day of school. If you don't, a lot of the time, the only crew members that you really know, unless you work with the same production designer and the same producers a lot, it's like the person that hires you. And sometimes that'll be your production designer, or 9 times out of 10, it's a producer that'll bring me on. So it's getting to know a lot of the crew for the first time and getting to see them. And then basically by the end of the show, you become best friends with everybody. So, and it's a movie averages about like 8 months, 6 to 8 months, depending on the budget. I think Candy Cane Lane, I was on that from September until March of last year, or this year, March this year. And it goes by so fast. It's such a weird like life experience to do a movie from beginning to end because before you know it, it's over. And then sometimes movies take like 3 years to come out and you've forgotten about it. It's like, oh yeah, that's great. Oh my gosh, all my friends that I haven't seen, like with Candy Cane Lane, we wrapped in March and it came out in December. So it was like I really didn't have any time to forget. So it was and Euphoria season 2 was like that too. Like we wrapped and like I think we did additional photography in December and it came out in January. So it's always fun to work on those kind of projects, but like the ones that like take like years and years to come out are kind of fun too, especially if they get a lot of momentum. Um, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that one we filmed that right before the pandemic shut down in 2020, and then that came out in 2022. That
Wow.
was cool.
That's
Yeah,
as
yeah.
that is a great
Uh,
movie too.
I was just gonna mention. You mentioned doing a period piece, and I noticed on your IMDb you did some. The kids are all right. The series that they.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I assisted on that
Oh,
a couple episodes. It was a fun show. I
yeah.
really liked being on that, but no, I was just assisting on that. But it was
Yeah.
I like that one.
That's got
Yeah,
to be more
period pieces.
interesting though, because you have to go find this, you know, 30, 40-year-old stuff, or at least to make it look like 30, 40-year-old stuff that, because you got people like me are going, that's not right. That wasn't
Uh-huh.
invented until 3 years after the show's supposed to take place, Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think probably my favorite genre is doing like a period, like some sort of 20, 30, 40 years ago, because it's almost like the roadmap is there a little bit, because when you have something like that, it gives you like layers of challenge where
Right.
if it's a specific thing, it needs to basically be specific to what it was. And I've done, I think, 4 or 5 period pieces where it was the most challenging one was Blonde, the one about Marilyn Monroe, because that was her entire lifespan from 1930s all the way to the 1950s. And I wanted to make that as period accurate as possible. And almost every prop you see in there was the exact same thing that she owned,
Nice.
which can be hard at times, but sometimes you get lucky, and a lot of stuff you have to buy. eBay's like my best friend, and it's also a curse because if you get something, it doesn't look right or it comes broken. A lot of the times it's one of the kind. I do a lot of flea markets in Los Angeles. We have amazing flea markets with thousands of vendors that come, and you can just basically find anything. And it's so much fun. It's almost like a scavenger hunt. And when it comes to like stuff like that, as long as you have like an overall idea of what you want it to be, you're able to find it's
Yeah.
the research and where it came from. Why would this person have that? And I'd like to be able to tell a story like with any prop. Where did this come from? Why do they have it? And how did they get it? It gives it more detail. So it's like, here, take this, hold this. It's like, oh, why do I have this? It's like, okay, it
Now,
makes more
now,
sense.
are there still prop houses in LA where you can go look for some of this stuff and like rent it for the production or whatever?
Oh yeah, we have Independent Studio Services
Yeah.
is one of the biggest prop houses in North America. We have History for Hire, which is all period props. They are amazing. I've used them all the time. They're some of my best friends that work there and own it. Then you got Sony Prop House just closed. Hand Prop Room, Target Props. Yeah, there's quite a few out in LA. I feel whenever I go do a project in like another state, I'm like, I don't know what to do. This I'm sure you guys make it work, but we are very spoiled in LA. You can find anything.
Mm.
Very cool.
Something I wanted to ask was, I know with props, I was always interested in this because you go out and find props, whether it's like stuff for set design or probably sometimes what actors have to use or hold, right? So when it comes to actors having to use or hold props, is there like a regimen that it has to go through? Because I know, there's projects that are SAG after, there's projects that are non-union, and then I don't know what that's like being on set and you're like, here's this prop, this is how you use it, and they're like, no, wait a minute, we gotta check this prop out. Like, how does that all come into play?
Well, it's there's not really a protocol because I'm usually hired on. I'll usually get about between 4 to 12 weeks to prep on a project. I if it's a movie, I'm making sure that I have every prop ready available in the beginning of the film because you never know if say there was something that was supposed to shoot 3 weeks in. Oh, we want to bring it up a week, and I don't want to hold a production because it's not ready yet. So I always try to have almost all the props ready to go. And most actors, they're pretty conscious about like what they're using, especially if it's in a scene. If it's something super crazy or like a gadget or something that has to move, there I usually try to do like a walkthrough, like show and tell with the actors along with the director. We'll have a prop show and tell with the director probably like 3 weeks out before we start filming. And I just lay everything out on the table. And I usually go from beginning of the film to the end or the beginning of the series to the end of the series, just showing all the props in their, how they would actually work, how, what we're going to do with this. And they'll usually give me critiques or notes or what they want to change or might inspire some new ideas for scenes once they see what I was capable of doing. And usually an actor, you can just put anything in their hands. A lot of the times actors love um, something to interact with when they're like, fiddling with their headphones or their glasses or a watch or checking the time, like giving them something to do. It's almost like it's like riding a bike. Like it's just a natural thing. Like it has to basically be cohesive with the scene. You want to just give them, something they'll be like, well, they wouldn't even use it if it was there. But if you give them things to do, like for instance, on Jamie Lee Curtis's desk for Everything Everywhere, a lot of those things were just stuff that I put on the desk. Like she had a giant pen with rubber bands on it. It's like I always try to put myself in the shoe of the actor. Why would I have this? What is going on? Like the armrest that Jamie was wearing, I was like, you probably got carpal tunnel syndrome, and you probably wear your like. I always walk through them
Mhm.
and spark ideas and listen to what they want. So it's usually it's like a back and forth. We'll usually collaborate on that and talk about it. It's you kind of walk away being like their best friend. I always tell some actors that are kind of newer, I'm like a genie. Like if you want anything, you tell me that your character needs it for the script and I will get it. Like I mean, I'm not going to tell you no. Like if it helps out your character and what you're doing in this scene, I'm all for it. I love ideas. I love, expanding on what you think you should have. I'm not gonna be like, no, you don't need that. It's not in the script.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, let me see what I got. I love doing that.
I need a pirate hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's costumes.
Yeah. I know there's, I forget who it is, but there's one actor that he likes to have something to do with his hands. So in a lot of his scenes, he's always eating something. Forget
Oh
who it
yeah,
is, but there's somebody who's known for almost all of his scenes. He's putting something in his mouth. He's always,
I think I know who you're
L-
talking about because I feel like I've worked with them.
yeah.
But that's a
So,
lot of actors.
so, talking about that movie is such a fun film. I done, I own it. I watched it so many times. I know you had fun um on set. Do you have any like funny or interesting stories to talk about? Some behind the scenes on that on that film?
From Everything Everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it honestly truly was one of like the most magical sets, and it wasn't a large budgeted film. But I instantly became friends with our art department, who had a big challenge ahead of them too. But I also became with friends with the actors and the directors, and it was almost like a family. And like if you show up in the morning on a film set, a lot of it's just like people are getting ready. we would show up in the morning. The first thing we would do was like a morning warm up routine. It was almost like a team building exercise for the whole movie. So every morning we would get together and somebody would lead, like, today we're gonna slow motion kung fu fight everybody, and we'd do it for like 5 minutes straight, and then scream and yell and shake everything out. And then we would our producers and the directors would give a medal to each to one person on the crew and just be like, you're amazing, thank you so much for being who you are, and here's a mug. And it was just like one of those things, like, oh my gosh, who's gonna get it today?
Mm-hmm.
And it made everybody so close, and there was never an instance where, like, oh, I'm afraid to bring this up or talk about this, or we were all on the same team trying to make a movie that to us seemed very impossible. And we also didn't know if anybody was going to like it because it was like the weirdest thing we'd all worked on. But the Daniels know how to steer a ship in the right direction and give advice anytime you need it. And it just magically worked. It was so much fun, and everything, like, I always try to make as much in camera possible without visual effects. I don't know, there's something about I can't I always can tell when something's fake or it's done this way or it's being lit up by post, and I always try to make that happen. So with being on set, I was always trying to, oh, let's throw one of these in there, let's add one of these, light up this, put LEDs in this thing. So it was a lot of fun, just going in there and just being brainstorming with people, and getting to know everybody, especially Ki Kwan. He's amazing. I love him. We're still friends, and getting to talk with him about the stuff that he would need for his character and his fanny pack and the Bluetooth
that
headsets.
scene.
Yeah.
That scene.
Yeah,
I
it
remember.
was so fun.
So, you mentioned that you'll get a script. So, what do you do when you get a script and it might say interior office? So immediately, do you start thinking, okay, what would be in the office and how would I decorate the office?
Well, when it comes to something like that, a lot of like I typically don't think about what would be dressed in. I would think about what the actor would physically touch. So basically, as
Okay.
a prop master, we're in charge of anything that they're physically touching with their hands or picking up or putting
Okay.
on. Anything that would be like books on a desk or a clock on a
Yeah.
wall. That's a lot is mostly set dressing, unless the actor had to go up and turn the
Right.
dial or take it off the
Right.
wall and do something with it. Then we'll also collaborate with the set decorator to feel what would feel cohesive in that space. So if it was
Okay.
like an office, depending on what he was doing in the office, if he was
Right.
coming into work, he'd have a briefcase, maybe pull out his laptop, sunglasses on, or keys in his hand that he could throw into a dish. Like I always try to think about little stuff like that. What would I do if I was coming into my office for the beginning of the day or leaving for the end of the day? So
Okay.
Hmm.
So when you're doing the music videos, it's probably a big difference. I would assume, and I could be wrong, that it's a big difference from a movie budget. So how do they approach you for a music video?
the budgets are definitely a lot smaller because usually a music video will, depending on what the size of it is or what we need to film, it'll only be like 1 or 2 days. Um, and with the Bad Bunny music video I just did, the reason why I was on that one was because Marcel, our DP from Euphoria, was the DP, and then Jason, our production designer, was a production designer. So like we're getting all the team back together, they're all coming on. So it's basically this kind of the same way as like a movie when we budget those things. If they want it, then we have to budget for it and be like, here's the price. There's always a price for something. Like the low budget non-union world, it was usually like, well, how can we get this for free and stuff like that. When it comes to like movies and projects that have budgets, it's usually planned out ahead of time, and they usually know like what we need, and because we're almost like a voice for the department. So as a department head, we basically budget out what we think we're going to need. We rent it, and yeah, they usually don't bat an eyelash, especially when it comes to bigger budget projects like that. They just want to get it done as fast as they can, and send it on its way.
Okay, so I gotta ask now on the low budget stuff. Has there been? Oh, I got one of those at home. I'll just bring mine.
I mean, it happens on the larger budget. It happens on the larger budget stuff too. I mean, but that was where I like got most of my stuff, and my kit was just, I never wanted to throw anything away because I knew that I wasn't going to have it on the next one maybe, or the budget for it. And I can reuse this. I can use one of these. And then it just kind of snowballed with having as much stuff as possibly going to have at any given time. And you typically learn what you need to keep, and that way you have something on hand. Coffee mugs are always a good thing because you never know when they want to give the actor sitting at their computer a cup of coffee to drink. And it's a weird mental disorder to have to not feel like a hoarder, but you have to be a hoarder, and making sure that you understand that as a person. You're not doing the wrong thing. It's just, you need to have this stuff.
But you have to be an organized hoarder so you can find what you
Uh-huh.
need.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm it's hard for me to organize, so I usually have my team helping me out, which is always the best part. And it's basically like I get to go to work with my friends, and we hang out all day, and then just go home at the end of
That's
the
awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
night.
I so I you it's we all like the same thing. I mean, we in tech, so we always have parts and stuff laying around just in case. But I have to ask you, on Candy Can Lane, okay, that was a massive visual movie. It had a lot of different stuff in it. And
Mhm.
how much of an influence was your, like, could you pull out some parts that you say that you particular had your hands in?
Yeah, the visual effects for that movie were just top tier. It was
Right.
Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and I was just in awe. Like there's nothing that's not possible with them. And the team, they came down from Sacramento or up Northern California, and they were down with us the whole time, and just collaborating with them and talking about like ideas. Like in my mind, I thought that was practical, but you guys have been building these in the three-dimensional world. Like, okay, you sure you don't need it? But it was like almost like I hadn't worked with a visual effects team this large and this talented. I mean, a lot of them are talented. I'm not going to downgrade anybody's work, but ILM, like they have a long history of visual effects, and the creativity that it was almost like they I always felt bad for them because they're like, oh, we'll just change that in post if we don't like it. I'm like, oh, you can't say that because they budget for every scene, every visual effect is a price point. So like it's not just, oh yeah, just give us when you're done filming, give it us all to us and we'll just add our stuff. They months and months and months of advanced work goes into the film with planning. So like I think the first thing that I saw from them was the Angels when they took flight and went up in the air and started taking out the geese. That was the
Mm,
first visualization that I had saw that they were working on, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this looks so good. And we haven't even filmed that scene, and it doesn't take place for another like 3 months.
mm,
So it was really fun. And even when we were having like our pre-production meetings, each week we'd get together and talk about stuff. Like our first AD was like, "You're gonna have the carolers like a stand-in for them, right?" I'm like, for what? I'm like, what? You want me to supply a figurine? I'm like, Josh, don't worry about it. We got the system down, and they called it the Rudolph system. And basically, they had these like little wires that would stick out, and they had a red light on it. And anytime one of the carolers or the figures would talk, that would light up. And then there was also a speaker in the green rooms where all the actors were basically like doing a Zoom meeting with each other, and the director could see them at Video Village. So they would talk, and then like the light would light up so that Eddie and Little Holly would know where to look when they were talking. So I was like, oh God, I guess if you need me to make something, I will, but it's not really a prop. So that's usually our battle we always play is it's not a prop, but we can do it. So like with there was like a mini Corvette that the figurines came around the corner behind on the
right.
table,
Mm,
and that was always supposed to be visual effects. And because in the beginning of that, like the conceptualization of this Corvette, we actually wanted it to be the pink Corvette from Barbie, and then the house that was on the table was supposed to be Barbie's dream house. But this was before Barbie anything had came out really about Barbie, and I'm actually friends with some of the studio heads at um, uh, Mattel, like their movie department.
mm,
And I was like, our product placement person couldn't get a hold of any of them at Mattel. And I was like, well, I actually am pretty good friends with them. Let me send them an email and see what's going on. So I got all their contact information and sent it over. And they were like, yeah, we have a movie coming out and we don't really want this like as a thing because the car played a big role in our movie, and that was when they were like, yeah, you can't use the Barbie dream car as your car, and please also change it. And it honestly, the Barbie dream car really didn't work for the scene. We needed to have 2 seats in the front, 2 seats in the back, and we always knew that. So we're like, we'll just design our own, and that's where it came from. Was Industrial Light and Magic making this car. And then at one point, I always have these little side conversations, and I think they said it. Oh, it'd be nice to have like maybe a stand-in or just something that's there that we can interpret as the car. And I was like, can I get the plans for that? When does this play? Like, oh, Friday, like 2 days from now. So I ended up getting the 3D models of that, sent it off to the 3D printer, and then had my model making friend. He painted the whole thing. It was extremely detailed, and it was to the point where most of the cars where it's a close up of the car, that's the model that I made.
Nice.
And then it worked out. They were so happy that I made that, because when the car was interacting with anybody, they were able to actually pick it up and use it, and then they would just put the characters in, and they were using it as frame reference for when they were like the car gets stuck on the grate. They were actually putting that in there, and then they just replaced it in post. So that was a happy moment.
That is
That's dope.
awesome. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is really cool. Now, I know we talked about props a little bit and like drinking coffee and eating, and that's something I've always been curious about, and I never got the correct answer on. So when actors are in a scene and they're supposed to be eating something, is it really real food or is it fake?
It can depend. If they're actually interacting with it and eating it, we always try to give them whatever they want. Like, if 9 times out of 10, if somebody's eating something, it's not because it was scripted a donut. It was probably because there was donuts and they got to pick out their favorite flavor. Or I usually ask the actors, like, hey, you have this eating scene tomorrow. What do you want to eat? And they'll usually tell me, and I'll prepare it. Like with on Euphoria, we had that happen a lot. um Anytime I'd ask like Sam a question, he'd be like, oh, just see what the actors want. Like, okay. So I just always just went right to the actors after I realized that was the answer I was going to get every time. So like I would talk to Cherry, who played Faye, and I was like, you have a scene tomorrow and you're in the kitchen cooking with Fesco. Is there anything? She's like, what if we were making like s'mores? And I'm like, s'mores? I was like, oh, what? How about pork chops? What if you're making pork chops? Like we always have. Sometimes it's hit or miss, but yeah, it's usually real food. If there's like some sort of limitation, like if an actor's like vegan or gluten free or has an allergy, we'll find something else. It's unless it's like something that's supposed to be gory or gross, well, it'll always be something that they can eat. And we always make sure that it's the safest thing possible. We'll hire, and usually if there's a food scene where it's not just something that's like out of a bakery, I'll hire a food stylist. My One of my best friends, Melissa McSorley, she's a food stylist in her industry, and she's done all the foods for my movies. She was the food stylist on Don't Worry, Darling, and did all the food scenes in the living room with the entire cast. And sometimes they take a day to shoot. Sometimes you're shooting for a week, so you always have to have, everything has to be exact. And a lot of the times when you have like continuity errors in food scenes and scenes where people are drinking or eating, that's where they can happen the easiest and the fastest, because 9 times out of 10, you don't know where they're going to go back to a scene, or if they're going to cut back to this person, and they could have taken 3 drinks in that previous take, and then in this one they just take one, so those levels not match. So it's always good to, every time they cut and trying to match everything, you just have to have a really good person that's on set. And my brain, because I for the first 6 years of my career, I was the only person in the props department, let alone I'm only one on set from props, because I didn't have any assistants. They were all pretty low budget. So like when I'm watching a movie, if there's a continuity error, it will literally jump out and slap me in the face, because that's what I did.
Like that Starbucks cup at the end of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. I can see that. Like, I can look at a monitor and it literally jumps out. That's not supposed to be there. I know what's supposed to be there. I know the scene very well. So it's just, and a lot of the time, sometimes it can get slipped by people.
Yeah.
An entire production can be watching that monitor and not see it happen, and it goes without notice. And then you're like, wait, why wasn't anybody paying attention? Like, we got into the scene, we didn't really remember it, and then you know, because a lot of the times not every scene is filmed they're not in the same order. Like the beginning
Right.
of the movie could be filmed at the very end, and the end of the movie could be filmed at the very beginning. So sometimes things they almost work out. They don't work out. So you end up changing them out for different things, and it just all kind of depends.
I know with me, I have one pet peeve. It's like NCIS is incredible for this. You know, they're always drinking out of their coffee cups, but you can tell their coffee cups are empty because of the one, they're tilting them a lot. Two, when they set them down, you hear that hollow clunk of the little
Uh-huh.
cup hitting the table. It drives me crazy. I'm like, there's no
Yeah.
liquid in that cup.
A lot and a lot of the times, like even they're supposed to be drinking a coffee and they're like, oh, I don't want any. I'll just put water in there and I'll make sure it's full because it's it gives like if there's
Yeah,
liquid in there, you're not like throwing it around, like they'll
yeah,
splash it everywhere, and it almost gives them like a way to like drown themselves
yeah.
with their crop. But I always feel like whatever somebody's like, oh, those are empty. It's probably because they drank it all and they didn't have a chance to get it reset. Like even when they're like, oh, those background actors have empty coffee cups, probably because those background actors drank all that liquid in there. They weren't supposed to, but they
Yeah.
did, and then they didn't tell anybody that they were out. So now they're waving around an empty thing. So it's usually if it's that reason, that's the reason why. If it's
And you're
empty, it's
right.
probably because
And people do hold them different if they're empty. They don't mean to, but they,
yeah, you hold it like an empty cup. Like you're
right.
just like you have no. I need a trash to throw this away. It's almost like
Yeah.
what you have in your head. So like if you ever see that, it's probably not because there was no liquid in it. It's probably because they drank it all and they didn't hadn't had a chance to reset it yet, and then they didn't use the take where it was
Yeah.
reset. So yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit before we started, and with all the stuff that you do, and I guess my question would be, if you had time to enjoy any movies and TV shows, what is your favorite now or all time? It don't even have to be now, just in general that you just enjoy.
Um, I like action, like adventure movies. Something that like will keep me guessing the whole time. Like I love Marvel movies. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, there's people
Yes.
that don't, but
Yes. Yes.
I absolutely love Marvel movies, and I would die to work on them. I did. I was just an assistant on Agents of Shield for all of the seasons. I would go. Scott Bauer, the prop master on that show, he would like text me like once a week. Hey, you want to come in for 3 days? We got this. I'm like, I'm on something. But if I was not working, I would be there in a heartbeat. I love going. I loved going over there. Like even the assistant's like, hey, you haven't been here a couple episodes. Do you want to come over or do you want to read the scripts? I'm like, yeah. And I would just go and sit and read and catch up. And 9 times out of 10, I probably knew more about what was going on than the actors and the people that were working because you kind of get desensitized to it. But I love the world that they've built and the connectivity between a lot of the stuff that you're filming and seeing and anticipating the next and with the adventure that they go on. And probably a Marvel. I don't know if I'd want to work on a Marvel movie just because there's so much secrecy and bureaucracy that goes into the filming of one of those. I would want to like I always if I get on a project or if I'm taking over somebody, I like it to be original. I hate following in someone else's footsteps to especially if the work that they did was like, oh, I would never do that. Like if I was on a Marvel movie.
Oh, froze again.
Oh, hey Carlo,
Mm-hmm.
a few more. Can we wrap it up? Not that I'm pressing, but I don't want to have to get up in the middle of this. Have a good conversation.
Oh, there it is. It was just
And he's
There you
back.
are. It froze for a moment.
yeah.
Um.
We'll start back.
So we left off with the Marvel stuff. And, and just for editing purposes, this is a pause, and I'm going to come up with a new question here in a moment.
Mhm.
What one thing I want to ask you about props is when it comes to tech props. I mean, all of us on this panel, we love technology, right? So gaming is a big thing in tech right now, and when you bring in this kind of stuff onto a set, are you really finding like these retro Game Boys, retro Game Gears? Are you finding like powerful gaming PCs. Like, do you actually bring all that on set, or is it like usually just shells of the item?
No, they are the real thing. It usually depends on, so if a scene calls for somebody playing a video game or on a computer, we usually have a product placement coordinator who I would tell, I need this, I need that, I need this, and then they would reach out to the companies and see what they'd like to send. Um, and like with computers, there's like a fine line of obviously having one that costs like $3,300, or having it custom built versus like getting an Alienware, which is from Dell, and they'd be able to give us one and we'd be able to use it. Apple, I've used Apple ever since I've worked in this industry as a prop and a means of basically having free product on set. And they're very gracious usually, especially if it's being featured. It's a good way to get, I mean, obviously you could be like, yeah, I want $500,000 to feature this, but it's like, yeah, it's just there. Like it just feels like it exists. And I feel like the pressure when you're not getting paid to have something you just get free, it's like I can just incorporate it in there. We don't gotta do a hands-on. We don't have to show the logo. You just put it in there, and if they see the logo, cool. It's cleared. Um, but like with like a lot of the tech that we use is all practical. Most of the stuff. Unless it's like a futuristic sci-fi film where
Yeah.
you're actually
Yeah.
shooting lasers. It just lights up, and I am personally not that good at making props that are just like with computer chips and motherboards and stuff like that. I'm not good at it. I leave that to the professionals. But some of the stuff that you see in person, it feels real. Like it
Yeah.
feels like it. I love that. That's like my
Yeah.
favorite part is
Now that
props.
brings
I
up
don't
an
know.
interesting question. So if it says that they're going to be using a phone, so then then somebody would reach out to like either Apple or to Samsung and say, hey, we'd like to use your phones in this project.
Yep.
So yeah.
I don't know if Samsung's still doing it. They used to. Samsung was a very big phone company, but their media division kind of went out the door.
Yeah.
But Apple, I mean,
Yeah.
I like I said, I've used them since like
Yeah.
around 2012 when I first started working with them. And you basically just submit a list. These are the
Yeah.
phones that I need. This is what I like, a wish list, and I usually get speakers, headphones, and everything's got to go back, unfortunately. But they overnight it to you, and it comes, and you're able to integrate it into your props. Um,
Oh,
Oop. And that was a good question too.
yeah, and there's always
Mm.
guidelines when it comes to most stuff.
Mhm.
We're not allowed to do certain things, like the villain of the movie isn't allowed to use an Apple product, which is a true thing. I think I was like things floating around. It's just as a protection for their brand. They don't
Right.
want anything bad to happen to it. But things, they will,
Yeah.
if you talk to them about it and the marketing of it, usually they'll be okay with most things.
That's a pretty cool piece of insight. And I never thought about how brands relate to the characters on set, and that makes a good point. There's probably a lot of brands with specifications on the kinds of characters that could use their items.
Yeah, it's we
Mm.
usually have a clearance team that will go through a script and say, oh, this or that. The craziest productions usually are with HBO because, like on Euphoria, if there was a product that you saw, there's probably a chance that we didn't ask for it. It was probably just used. Like we don't ask for alcohol product placement on Euphoria because it's a lot of underage drinking. There was like a scene where Nate was drinking and driving with Cassie, played by uh, why can't I think of her name all of a sudden? I just blacked out. But anyway, it was a driving scene where he had picked up some alcohol, beers, and then ended up picking her up and taking her on a ride. And I ended up using Budweiser. And it wasn't one of those, like everybody was drinking and was just, he went into a liquor store and I literally was like, hey, which one do you want? This six pack or this six pack? And we went with the Budweiser. And then it was just him driving down the road drinking. When that episode came out, I think I was getting like a phone call from Anheuser, like, every like hour because they wanted to talk to me about how dare I put alcohol in the hands of a underage drinking. I'm like, this happens. This is why
Mhm.
it happens. People use a fake ID. This is what they do.
Mhm.
This is a real life thing.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to portray like we didn't want any of the alcohol to be fake labels. We didn't want it.
Yeah.
We wanted it to feel real. And if I would have used that one instance as a a scene to put a fake label on it was like, oh, that doesn't feel right. This feels like a made up story kind of thing. I don't know, but they were very upset. They were like, next time, just tell us. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't have to do that, but but that was always fun. We most of the stuff that you really want to watch out for when you're doing clearances is usually photos that someone has taken. Those are the first thing we would clear, but anything else is usually fair game. There's usually a use of rights or the fair use. So if it's something that you're using it as it's intended, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get in trouble using it on camera. And they usually won't come after you. But like Euphoria, we had so much product placement. I think it was like an entire shipping container of stuff that they were giving us because they wanted to be a part of that movie, that show.
Oh man.
Wow, that's some amazing stuff. Like some amazing insight into what props are, and shout out to you, for working on Candy Cane Lane. It is such a fantastic film,
Yeah.
and I'm glad that it came to a streaming service and people can enjoy it before the holidays. I think
Hmm.
that's pretty epic. They could sit there and watch with their friends or family.
It
You know,
is it is definitely a good flick and very visual. All the
Oh
people
yeah.
on there. Uh Definitely. So that's a good project to be a part of.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Reginald Hudlin, our director,
I
10 out of 10. He's so nice, so kind. He made it so enjoyable. Even like with Eddie Murphy's team with that and Imagine Entertainment, which I'm like still in shock that that was part of our movie. Ron Howard being on set was just like, oh my gosh, and Brian Grazer. I'm like, these
Wow. Yeah.
titans in the industry, and I get
you
standing right
know,
here with them.
that's awesome.
you said
I
Reginald
know.
Hudlin,
Just
and
Mhm.
stop.
TK's eyes lit
Stop
up
it.
because
Oh,
he is a fan of Reginald.
Yeah, he's one of the founding members of Milestone Media,
oh,
which
cool.
and he done lots of great movies in the past, but and because I'm a fan of their, you know, 100% black owned comic book company, and all of them are just great people. You know, Dwayne McDuffie, rest in peace, is one of the founding members as well. Dennis
Oh,
Cohen, all of them are good friends.
that's so awesome. Yeah, he's a genuinely nice person, and I love that when you meet somebody that's like that. Like even if like somebody was like, "What do you want?" Like getting he's like, "Ha ha ha!" Like he just has this infectious like happiness that I love. I love working with people that are like that, and I hoped I do another movie with him. I would absolutely love that. And Eddie's production company with Charisse as his head, she's amazing. Like I loved every experience working with everybody on this movie. It was just such a blessing. And it's always, you can always tell like when somebody sees the kindness in you and they like it spreads, and that's what you get thanked for. Like, thank you for your props are amazing, but also thanks for being a nice person, because 13-hour, 14-hour days can be a lot on some people, but like having just like a little bit of ray of sunshine can, make anybody's day. And I think that's everybody just was like, why are you so happy about props? And like, you like doing this? Like, I don't know. I gotta be here. I still enjoy it. I don't know. I love doing
It don't
it
feel like
around
work.
the universe. Yeah, not at
Yeah.
all. It
Yeah.
never does.
And
So,
he's not a stranger to working with those same people. I mean, he worked with Eddie on Boomerang,
mhm.
and Martin Lawrence and all them, even on House Party, right? That was his movie.
Mhm.
And so he's definitely kept a close circle to the same people that he likes working with for sure.
Uh, uh,
So that
I know. I
means
always. I don't
Yeah.
like to count my chickens. I went. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
like my brother will do that a lot. Like, no, I'm not. I'm not signed up for it. I haven't signed my contract. I don't know if it's going to happen. They could always
Yeah.
find somebody else, or a producer wants to hire this person because they worked with them on their last movie. So I always hold out, and always know that I had a lot of fun the last time I worked with them. So, and not all experiences will be the same, because I work with people the same people. I'm like, what was I thinking? What was going on here? Was I on? So, but he was genuinely a really nice person. I remember the first time I showed him a prop, which was one of the drums that the drummers drumming were playing. And I brought it upstairs and I showed her product. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome!" He was like running through the office playing it, and Reggie's like, "What? This is awesome! Our first tangible thing from the movie." I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "You like it? Should I keep moving?" He's like, "Yes, this is amazing. These are awesome." I'm like, "Oh, I love that spirit."
Very
So,
cool.
That's awesome.
Before we wrap it up, Paul, Dion, do you have any other questions?
I'm good. I think I'm yeah.
I think you're amazing, by the way, and thank you for sharing all this information and behind the scenes look at what it's like to be in your life. Sure. I'm sure you got
thank
other
you.
stories you could probably share. You probably can go on forever, to be honest. But we really do appreciate everything that you do and bring these stories to life with your props and everything. Because like you said, even in Candy Cane Lane, I mean, it was a visual piece that was just. I watched it like 3 times already, so
Oh,
it's just it takes a village to put a project together,
uh-huh.
and you just don't know how much work goes into behind the scenes. And listening to you, you
So
didn't
much.
did it all, and too
Yeah.
much. You had a life experience.
I was in awe like every day, like seeing what they were accomplishing, like with the sets. Like somebody like that's what I like that like what you just said, like watching a movie. Sometimes you don't understand what actually goes into it. Yeah, the script might be bad or the acting's there, but the behind the scenes of what it took to pull off some of that stuff, it's like its own theme park experience on its own. And the hours and the days and the meetings and the collaborations and the builders, like just to think one person would be so hard. It's an army of people and we all have to work together, and it's we're all on the same page and all the same concept. And it's great to be able to be a part of something where everybody's happy and fun to work with like that.
Well,
It's awesome.
yeah, that's amazing. And Josh, after we wrap up, if you could just hang on for a moment or two. But I
Yeah.
do want to thank you for sure for coming on and telling us your stories. And honestly, I learned a lot from this interview. I had no idea how much stuff somebody in props has to go through to help get a project completed, or how many people it takes in props to kind of. And I think I got a better idea now. So every time I see a prop now, I'll appreciate it a lot more. Like, who put that coffee cup there? That pen, who
Uh-huh.
put that there?
Mm.
Yeah,
I'll be thinking about it.
months of talks, months of concept and talking about most
Yeah.
of that stuff. It just doesn't show up. It's if they're using it on camera, there's probably some conversation about it, especially if it had to be fabricated.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, everybody,
Real
thank
quick
you.
before we go, no, before we go, we have that one important question
Oh,
we
you
gotta
do
ask.
remember, Paul? Yes.
Yeah, yes. Always, always ask this question. And this will, this could tilt the interview either way. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Pineapple on pizza. I'm from Michigan, and I think that's a yes. I don't mind. I don't hate it.
I do. I'm just throwing it
Oh,
out there.
oh, okay. It doesn't bother me. I'm not like a cynical pineapple on pizza hater person. I mean, I'd eat it if it was like the only thing it was pineapple and ham wouldn't bother me, but it's almost like makes it a dessert, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on, and just hang out for a second afterwards. And everybody who's watching at home, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Give me just a second. I'll